Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Open dApp Framework. And this is going to be an open overview video of the session we had. So I'm gonna start sharing screen. I am now showing you a Mara board, which is called Project-Based Learning Decentralized Project Management Framework. And this was changed from the proposal called Open dApp Framework. On this motherboard, you will see it's on 4 sections. Today, I will share a bit of the live session parts to the last session we had, and then we move into the framework area where we organized and analyzed the information from the session. So when I zoom into this latest session, and the session name was Project Management Tools and Introduction to Task Management Framework session. In that call, I presented what tools you have been using for project management. We did some brainstorming there. And then we delved into discussion of what does the tool do for you and how does the tools you are using shape your work culture. And at the end of the call, I shared task management process mapping of what we did for SingularityNet. And finally, we did some feedback and ideated on the next session. So if I zoom a little out, you will see a bunch of stickies and exercises, and all of that information was gathered on this bottom section, organizing session to resources. So if I zoom into this area, and there we had 2 first exercises where we looked into what tools do participants use for project management and what does the tool do for them. I highlighted with the purple are some feedback, and with the cyan or the blue ones, and the ones which are even more highlighted feedback. So the first thing we encountered was that methods are also tools, and we didn't really address them. So something for the future to keep in mind. The exercise gives a lot of insight into downsides and the tools we use, able to see work as more bite-sized objects, helps to visualize how different tools are connected. Many of tools are used to capture and demonstrate value. For some, it's a barrier to even try a new tool. The tools you shape and the culture of your group. And ClickUp is an example of a tool that requires a steep learning curve before it brings the value. And when we did these exercises here on the top, we gathered all the tools we're using. We also tried a sub-experiment to organize them into 4 quadrants. Is the tool open source? Is it paid service or paid product? Is it custom-made or self-made? Or it's something more complicated, or we're not quite sure how to describe and it doesn't fit to any of the 3 of these above solutions. And then on what does the tool do for you, in there we also asked different questions. What outputs these tools have provided to you? Has the tool produced you any extra work? If yes, what are these, and what do you do with the tool? And the idea here was to see if we can drill down even more of the tools you are using, and do you understand the different areas, and if people are sharing that information and they have similar use cases, then like the overlap of that. We brought that into Google Sheet, which is also publicly available. And from the first sheet, you can see the first thing we can notice is the fact that we are not using much of open source tooling. WordPress, Gitbook joined up, and Excel I'm working on. All that, this is also a bit of complicated area because you do need a license in order to use that tool. And most of the products people in this call used were paid services and paid products, or a bit more complicated match of those. And when I look at the heat map of the tools which were overlapping over different groups, we can see a heavy emphasis on Zoom, Google Suite, and Microsoft tools. On the area of what does the tool do for you, here it was much harder to synthesize learning, but if I look into has the tool produced you any extra work, then dwork was the one which kind of brought up a lot of issues compared to other ones. So perhaps there is something where we are trying to retrofit our culture into dwork and it doesn't really work, and that it kind of gives us a signal of all the issues people are coming up with that. And most of our session was a bit more emphasized on the dwork. All right, I'm back. So in conclusion, we learned the project management tools play a significant role in managing projects effectively. These tools are used to capture and demonstrate value, provide insights into downsides of a project, visualize work as bite-sized objects, and connect different tools to improve project management. However, some people may perceive the use of these tools as a barrier to contribute. It is essential to note that the tools used to manage a project shape the culture of the group. While there is no universal agreement on the features that the project management tool should have, it's worthwhile to try frameworks for setting boundaries and organizing task management. Methods can be also considered as tools in project management. Methods are the strategies and processes used to manage a project, while tools are the instruments used to implement those methods. Finally, it was quite interesting to learn that many open source tools are used in community which thrives on building open source technology. As a side note, it was quite interesting to learn that not many open source tools are used in the community which thrives on building open source technology. Heavy emphasis is on the use of Zoom, Google, and Microsoft tools to collaborate with the community. On another side of the discussion, we tried into a question of how does the tools you are using shape your culture? And we had a lot of free-form discussions here and some ideas how we could differentiate those. I will point out that several examples and use cases that people pointed out are in the original video. So, and I didn't take the meeting notes from all of these stories on the Marboard, nor will I retell them. So if you're interested in case studies and insights from other community members, check up the video, which is you can see from here or in YouTube description below. And main highlight was platforms give an option to introduce culture into the platform compared to their product, where the product may start defining your culture. In conclusion of this section, tools are an essential aspect of project management, but they can also significantly impact culture and relationships. The tools used to reflect the group's values, attitudes, and behaviors, and they influence how people interact and communicate. For example, if a group uses a tool that emphasizes hierarchy and control, it may create a culture of command and control. Conversely, if a group uses a tool that promotes collaboration and transparency, it may foster a culture of openness and collaboration. Therefore, it is essential to choose tools that align with the desired culture of group and ensure that they are used appropriately. Some tools can create distance and isolation, while others can facilitate collaboration and connection. For example, if a group uses a tool that encourages individual work and competition, it may create a sense of isolation and disconnection among team members. On the other hand, if a group uses a tool that facilitates communication and collaboration, it may foster a sense of community and teamwork. Interacting with some tools may change who you are. For example, if you use the tool that promotes an authoritarian leadership style, you may become more controlling and less collaborative over time. Additionally, some tools may create an unhealthy work-life balance, leading to burnout and other negative effects. Therefore, it is essential to be aware of the impact of tools on your behavior and well-being. Despite the potential danger of tools, they can also provide opportunities to create friendships. Collaborating on a project using a tool that promotes teamwork and communication can help build relationships and develop a sense of community. Additionally, shared experience using tool can create bonds and connections that extend beyond project. Now moving on to the last section of our session, where I demonstrated process mapping. So in there, task process mapping is a visual representation of the steps involved in process, including the actions and transformations that take place between them. Process maps are used for visualizing the process and its key components. It helps to make it easier to identify the areas where abstract models or design patterns can be applied and to evaluate their effectiveness in achieving the desired outcomes. Our first mapping was done for the T-work tasks. Because the T-work forces Kanban style, it also includes 5 lanes of framework. Open space outside of T-work, to do section, a lane which describes the birth of task, and the handover to one going to execute the task. In progress describes all the steps required to complete the task or change status, or change the project status. In review, final documentation for handing over the task to treasury managers, and done is the output that this task provides us. The sticky notes are colored based on role who should be working on the task. So for example, here we have translator as a green one, and if you look at the process, you will be quite easily differentiate the translator role in this project, starting from submitting their preferred language and interests, then they have an interview, then they can claim tasks, and then they can submit tasks. For example, looking at the onboarding or project management support, these are all the yellow ones, and which are all the connecting tissues to make that added value represented in a correct way, or in a way that the community wants it to be represented. And you can see other roles also in the process here. So what did we learn? So the full description of how this kind of is shared is also shared in the video, on the full video. But the main feedback was, this is a nice framework to be used as an example of where to set boundaries and how to organize task management. And keep in mind, it is addressing process mapping for T-work. Some tools may be used more effectively, but that gives a gist of how could process mapping look like. Then framework helps to identify the style of collaboration. And final feedback, what is missing is flexibility, responsiveness for tools who want it, building in ways to incorporate alternative possibilities if there is a blocker because the structure does not fit. And so that comes back to the fact that T-work is not really that flexible and that's a good lesson to learn from all of this. And therefore, we may look into other tools and alternative ways to collaborate. And the last thing from the session were the feedback itself. So what can you learn from this workshop? The differences between project management, platforms, and products, the integration between project management and governance. Many tools are used for some same high-level purposes, and it's not easy to find out specific reasons why the tools is used. Mostly seems to be about that it's just the tools people know. Also, even though we are building open source tools and advocate highly the use of that, barely anyone uses open source tools. Some insights into the T-work process framework, some insights into what I want from the project management tool and how to bring that to the community. insights as to my own experience with project management and the tools I use around Catalyst and how to improve my efforts for the effect. And finally, the creative ways to use existing tools. Yeah. Yeah, so there may be some sticky notes I may skipped, but that was the overall gist of our last session. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.